Hi, everyone. Mike Malatesta here, and welcome back to the How Did It Happen podcast. On this podcast, I dig in deep with every guest to explore the roots of their success, to discover not just how it happened, but why it matters. My mission is to find and share stories that inspire, activate, and maximize the greatness in you. On today's episode, I'm talking with Dr. Dorine Rivers, a mother of 5, the CEO of Alpha 81, and an expert in maximizing ideas and human potential. We talk about what it's like to be unemployable, what she learned growing up with a dad who was a world adventurer, how grit comes from knowing your why, and why it's so important to just start.
You can create your product or your service one of two ways. You can go create something you just think is really cool, and then you can go out and try to find a market for it, which usually involves educating people as to why they need it. Or you can go out and find out what the market needs in a niche industry that you're passionate about, and then you can create what they need, and then you just plug it in, and your market's already there, and they're ready for it because they've been waiting for it because they need it. The latter obviously is the better way to do that. And you're going to provide something people need, and you don't have to talk them into it because they're waiting for it.
Dorine is an amazing success story, and I think you'll love this conversation. Hi, Dorine. Welcome to the podcast.
So great to be here with you, Mike. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh, my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I think it was Justin Breen that introduced the two of us, or connected the two of us, and had great things to say about your new book, Brain to Bank, How to Get Your Idea Out of Your Head and Cash In. And I've got a picture of that book up on the screen right now if you want to see it. Dr. Dorine Rivers has an undergraduate degree in creative writing, a Ph.D. in business management, investment banking, and general contractor licenses, and a few other degrees and certifications in between. She is the CEO of Alpha 81 Inc., an Arizona-based firm successfully supporting corporate innovations, expansions, and exits in software, technology, medical, life, health sciences, education, and other industries. Her new book, her latest book, I guess I should say, Brain to Bank, as I mentioned, How to Get Your Ideas Out of Your Head and Cash In, has a plethora of resources and tools that will help you get your idea from your brain to your bank. With these additional resources, you'll be able to improve and accelerate getting your idea out of your head and cash in even quicker. So I'm really excited to learn more about that. You can learn more about Dorine at her website, which is alpha81.com. LinkedIn, she's Dorine Rivers, Dorine. And of course, the book, brain2bank.com. So River, I start every podcast with the same simple question, and that is, how did it happen for you?
It was very early in the game. I really think some people are literally born unemployable, and so they become entrepreneurs. And I think I realized that at age 8, all the kids in the neighborhood had lemonade stands, and they're selling lemonade for a penny a piece, and they're all in competition with each other at the same price. And I looked at that and I just thought there's got to be a better way to do that. So I took ice cube trays and my brother and I filled them with Kool-Aid, different flavors, and then put them in the freezer. And about halfway through, you got to remember to go in and stick the toothpicks in there. And then you end up with these little baby popsicles. And no one had popsicles, just us. And we were selling them for 2 cents. And within a week, we had everybody's business, and everybody just wanted cubesicles. And from there, we went on and created puppet shows and a bunch of other stuff. But, when you get an idea, you go, oh, well, why wouldn't I do that? And you just try it. And I learned that very early in the game. I had parents that, taught us that we could do anything we wanted. We just had to decide to go do it. And we learned to be independent and creative early on. And it just carried through right into the career that I've had for 30 years, which is helping startups get up and running. I have companies that call me and want me to come and start their company. And I've come in as early as even naming the company. But after about a year and a half or two, you have them up and running, systems and processes, and and you hand it to them and you say, here's the baby, don't kill it. And then you go to do another company. And that's been the path for me.
And how, tell me about your parents during you. They encouraged this. Well, what were they up to? What was their life?
My father was a world adventurer, and he ended up starting one of the biggest whitewater rafting companies in the world at the time, and it's been around 62 years now. He's not here anymore, but other people are running the same company, and he would go to places and explore them. And I grew up whitewater rafting and literally living in a sleeping bag and sleeping on the sand and running rivers all summer, and then going to Mexico in the wintertime and hacking the jungles of Mexico with a machete, trying to discover Mayan ruins. So it just seemed like the natural way, and I didn't know how blessed I was at the time and how unusual it was at the time to be able to do those things. I just thought that's how you did your life, and it stuck with me.
And was that a family affair beyond you and your dad? I mean, you have siblings, or did your mom come along, or was it?
Oh gosh, my mom was as involved as anybody could be.
Okay.
I had an older brother, and then there's 6 girls in a row, and
Oh
I'll
my gosh.
never, and because of the type of company that it is, at the time, women were not boatmen, and so I learned to cook and do a bunch of other stuff, but they are now. But at the time, I said to my dad, I said, do you wish you would have had more boys? He said, heavens no. He said, my girls can do anything that boys can do. And we never thought there were limitations or boundaries.
That's a nice way to be raised.
It was incredible.
And I know you traveled around, but were you born in Arizona as well? That's where you are now.
I was born in California. I got transplanted early in the game when I was 5 years old, away from the ocean, and I've always been imprinted to the beaches of California and wanting to go back there. But I've lived in many of the different states west of the Rockies, and most of it's been for business when I've moved and gone there to start other businesses, and I've been around, but I'm anchored here. At least I haven't moved in the last 8 years, which is sort of a miracle for me.
What was the longest stretch prior to that?
Oh, well, I was in Utah probably almost 40 years. I've lived there 3 times. But I've been back to California several times. I've lived here in Arizona 3 times. I've been in Idaho. I've been in Washington. I spent a great deal of time in Oregon, and so those have been the main places.
And was it, at least as far as you can remember, was it really at 8 years old that you realized that you were potentially unemployable outside of your family?
I was the square peg trying to fit into the round hole my entire life. And it started with being 8 and having all these great ideas. And my friends are, playing with dolls and playing jump rope. And I'm over, building a tree hut. And then I'm creating a slide that goes down. And I'm doing, an amusement park ride for everybody and charging them for it.
Gotcha. So, okay, so that was the next adventure, your own amusement park. Take us from 8 to, through high school. What was going on with you? I mean, I know you were working with your dad in the business, I guess, while you were, I don't know, were you like a homeschooled person, or were you just?
Oh, no. I was just mainstream public. We didn't have any money growing up. I grew up to figure out how to get things and how to get places. My mom had 6 kids by the time she was 28 or something. And if you wanted to get somewhere, you walked. And it feels like the story of walking uphill both ways in the snow to go to school, but it literally was like that. And we just had to figure out how to get there, or we didn't go. But I was working with my dad in the summers. We would have a different place to live every summer, where he was starting a new part of the river running. So we'd be in Utah, or we'd be up in Idaho, where he was running the sailway up which runs through Idaho and Montana. So we're living up that way. And then Arizona and Fredonia, which was the base for the Grand Canyon, Cataract Canyon. And I just moved around all summer long. I was never even home. And you learn to figure out these new environments and how to adjust, and hopefully you make new friends, but it's for 3 months and you got to go back and go to school. But that took me through high school, and then my parents were very, very young. They were in high school when they got married, and so I had really young parents, and they didn't go to college. And so when I graduated from high school, they didn't sit down and say, do you want to go to university? Do you want to go to college? What do you love to do? What do you really like? What are you good at? Let us help you. Like, those discussions didn't happen, not even once. And it's because they never happened for them. So it didn't cross their minds to do that. And so I graduated from high school, and it's rolling into July, and I'm thinking maybe I'll go to college. So I sold the racing bike I had just bought. I sold my guitar. I sold my flute, and I got enough money to pay the first quarter tuition. And that's all I had. And I bummed a ride because I didn't have a car, and I bummed a ride to university with my neighbor. And then I took a sleeping bag with me, and I stuffed it into the closet of the Alpha Chi house because I had joined the Alpha Chis. And then I'd go to bed after everybody else and roll that sleeping bag out and sleep on the couch. And then I'd roll it back up and stuff it in the closet before anybody got up, and I'd go to class. And the first weekend, just a few days in, one of the Sigma Chi's next door said, we just lost our cook. Do you know how to cook? Like for large groups. And I said, I learned how to cook for 50 to 100 people on the river. I said, It's nothing. And he said, great, you're the new cook. So now I have free lodging with my sleeping bag next door. Now I have food because I'm cooking and I can eat there. And I have money that I can save, and I finally got a car, and then I got an apartment, and then things progressed from there. But I went to school not knowing how I was going to pay for it. I just got enough for the first quarter, and I said to myself, I'll just figure it out. Right. And it all came together.
Huh. And that's an amazing story. So you're the cook for the fraternity, the fraternity house next to your sorority house is that correct?
That's right. and so now I get to eat lunch and dinner there because I'm cooking there. So now I got food, and I got a place to live, and I'm going to school, and within a week I figure out how I'm going to keep going, and I figure out my major, which I changed 7 times. But I graduated in 8 quarters. Because I just thought spending 4 years was way too long. So I just pumped up the process and hurried it.
Huh. And change your major 7 times, and you still graduated in 8 quarters. So tell me where you started and where you ended up.
I ended up in English because it was easy for me and I loved it. But then I took some courses in anatomy and things, and I love medicine. So then I was in pre-med, and then I went into pre-law, and then I went back to pre-med, and then I went into education, and then back to English because it was easy, and then back to education, then back to English. I ended up in English, graduating in creative writing because it was mindless. It was easy for me, and I just was looking to graduate at that point. And I thought, I'll just do English. And it has been one of the best decisions I've ever made. Later on, I did get accepted to law school, but I ended up not going because I ended up getting married. Then that takes you on another path, right?
And let's go down that path, but in a minute. And sorry if I cut you off there. I also have an English degree, and I also took creative writing in college. So you've piqued my interest there on a couple of things, and I'll start with the first. As far as creative writing goes, can you tell us some of the stories that you remember writing about when you were in school?
Oh gosh, I remember writing one about an avalanche, and what happened was were two guys that were in a cabin in the snow. This was the first short story I ever wrote, and I still have it. And what happens is one guy wanted to leave, and the other guy didn't want to leave, and so the guy who didn't want to leave tried to stop the one who did, and it goes on, and it involves a boat and the guy coming after him with a shotgun and so forth, and when the shotgun goes off, it starts an avalanche, and it kills them both, and nobody leaves. And I remember the teacher saying to me, "That's not a resolution. This has to have a resolution. Someone has to win." And I kept the comments, and of course you see movies that the avalanche won, so somebody did win, right? But she didn't see it that way. But it was the first story I ever wrote, but it got my teeth sunk into creative writing and expressing myself and thinking about things people aren't thinking about, and then I got into training, where I made a whole series of training programs for a company, and that one was more about education, but then I used metaphors to illustrate what I was doing. So you're telling stories to illustrate your point, which is the most poignant way to actually teach somebody, is to tell them a story that illustrates the point. This book, Brain to Bank, does that. In every single chapter, there are stories to illustrate, if not more than one story per chapter, to say this is what happened. And when you're reading it, a lot of times you can see, oh gosh, I did that, or gosh, I might have done that, or why did they do that, but you're having a reaction to it. Right. And it makes you think about what's being taught there, because you're interacting emotionally with what is being told.
How much in the story, the shotgun goes off and the avalanche starts, how much time, like how sorry to sort of go deep on this, but do you remember how much sort of character exploration you did with the two of them from the time that the shotgun went off and they could see that the avalanche was coming until it won?
It's funny you say that, because I went back and read it about a month ago, and I was 16 when I wrote that, 15 maybe, and I was surprised at how well they were characterized by their actions. Okay. And I don't know where I learned that so early in the game. They always say, don't tell, show. And it took me forever to understand what that meant. It's basically you're not saying, oh, he was a mean person. You're showing him kicking the dog, or, and then you make that assumption yourself as the reader. And I knew how to do it. I just didn't know that was the name of it. But I took screenwriting, and I wrote movies for about 10 years. And that's where you really hone in your craft, because every page that you write in a specific software, it's called Final Draft. Every page is 1 minute of a movie, and you cannot spend a lot of time with this big flowery explanation of what's going on. You have to get right into it, and every word matters. And what matters even most is what's called subtext, and that's what you didn't say, but it's inferred. So once you learn how to do that, all your other writing, your biographies or fiction or business books, you learn to infer things and to truncate what you're saying, so that it's quicker and actually more intense and more you're conveying more information with less words.
I got it. Yeah, that's a skill that I very much want to not just have, but can work on and continue to get better at, because it's just so well. And as you've written novels and stuff too, it's just so difficult to be able to do that. It's very difficult to let the story tell the story, as opposed to thinking you need to tell the whole story in words, dialogue.
You have to trust the smarts of your readers.
Right.
They say the most intimidating thing for a writer is the blank sheet. And I don't think that's the most intimidating thing. The hardest thing for writers is just starting. Yeah. And that's every day. And some writers will write and they will leave a sentence half done. So when they start the next day, they have the place to pick up and then they can keep going. It's a brilliant technique.
Mm. So second question that's English related, you mentioned pre-med a couple of times. So you ended up on the English with English, but you were also into science. And you said that English was, that was the best. I think you said something like it was the best choice that you could have possibly made. I like to think the same way, but it's probably more because I made that choice than it is maybe objectively the best choice. But I want to get your opinion between, there's a lot of focus now on STEM and on, really concentrating on a specific discipline, as opposed to people say, well, an English degree is maybe worthless because you're not actually learning, something specific. And I'd love to hear how you think about that.
There's a couple thoughts on that. The first one is, if you are able to write and then, of course, speak correctly and succinctly and get your point across and people understand it, your head's above anybody who knows what they're doing but can't actually tell people about it, and they can't explain it and they can't teach it. Writing and be able to express yourself is a valuable tool. It doesn't matter what other avenues you decide to add to that. It starts there. If you don't do that well and you can't do that well, you're at a distinct disadvantage. The other thing I found as time went on was all my other loves of science and medicine and law and construction and whatever else, I ended up doing anyway. I went and started companies that do those things. And so I got to play in that arena and I got to do it anyway.
Well, I like the way you squared that up, because I do agree with you. If you are a great communicator, writer, speaker, presenter, anything else that you have, any other knowledge that you have, just to me is exponentially juiced up, as opposed to someone who has great knowledge about something, but has a really difficult time explaining it to someone in a way that makes them want to stay interested or stay awake.
I have people I've worked with who can't spell at all. And if they end up sending that out and someone hasn't looked at it, what is the first impression of that business that gets that letter? It doesn't matter if the guy knows what he's doing. He can't say what he knows what he's doing, because all the guy can see is that you said, you're a fool, Y-O-U-R, instead of Y-O-U apostrophe R. And that's all they can see is that, oh, this guy can't spell. And then they don't listen to anything else you have to say. It sounds elementary, but it's a real thing. So first impressions matter. And usually that's email and or now a text. And so the written word is going to be the first thing you see.
So it's so true. And in a world where it seems like everyone is telling everyone not to judge, you just can't help judging. You get something that's not written correctly or something that's not professional, whatever, you're going to judge that person. Whether that's fair or not, that's what you're going to do, right? And you're going to make a determination or a decision based on what you see, and you're going to make it very quickly, just like that, without even thinking about it.
Exactly.
So law school, you said you were going to go to law school, and instead you ended up getting married. And as I reflected on some of the information that I have about you, you went on to have 5 children. All of them, the oldest was 5 when you had all 5. Is that correct? So take us down that path.
It's painful. No, it's not. I had my first baby at 21, and when I got that English degree, I was 6 weeks away from giving birth to my first child. And I'll never forget, the provost was sitting there and he handed me my diploma and he's shaking my hand and he's looking at me in the eye and he says, "Congratulations." And then he looks at my ready to burst belly and he goes, "Congratulations." And it was funny. 5 years later, I had my 5th baby in the car at midnight in the rain, and I decided there was a better way to make a living.
As someone who coaches people and helps entrepreneurs and startups, and how do you explain it to people in a way that makes them think that they're capable of it as well, when I think they'd be talking themselves out of that?
Well, yeah, it comes down to number one, what do you want? And number
Mm-hmm.
two, how bad do you want it?
Yeah.
And three, why do you want it? And if you have clarity on those things, nothing's impossible. You just go back to the reason why you want it so badly. And,
Yeah.
for me, it was down to, I really believed in education. I still believe in education. I listen to a book every week. I take classes all the time. And I am forever trying to learn new things faster so that I can use it to build more things, make myself better, help more people. And it all goes down to, what do you want for yourself? And if you're listening to the what Wayne Dyer likes to call the good intentions of others, people always have great ideas about how you should live your life. And if you're buying into that, then you're not really living your life, you're living their life. And
Right.
so you got to sit down and you got to look in the mirror, and you got to spend some contemplative time deciding what you really want, and then how bad do you want it. And if you really want it, then you put some action in behind that. You decide how you're going to go about doing it. You put a time stamp on it. It shows up on your calendar. And when it shows up, you do it. If you can do that, really nothing's impossible.
Hmm. Hmm. So thank you for that. We were talking before we hit record on this that Brain to Bank is, I think, your ninth book, and you're working on your 10th book now. I think I have that right? It made me think, why was right now the right time for you to write Brain to Bank?
It was time, because I was spending a lot of time helping others to start their companies. And this book is the culmination of the last 30 years of helping companies. Well, what's the best way to help them? It's to start at the entrepreneur level and to provide them with a roadmap that shows them how to do it, and more specifically, even how not to do it. There's a section in the book called another series, another episode in the drama series of I Didn't See It Coming. And it's all the mistakes that people have made while they were running their companies or starting their companies or trying to sell their companies. And I talk about what they did that didn't work for them. And then I say, do it this way. You just learned your lesson from these guys, so you don't have to make that mistake yourself. Now, this is how you do it. And at the end of every chapter are action accelerators, which are the action pages for you to write down how you're going to do what you just learned. And then you're going to go do that. And then when you move on, you're building your base all the way along of all the things that you need. And the first thing is, why are you doing this? And if you're not clear on that, then you don't have anything to fall back on when things get really tough.
Yeah.
And then that's where your grit comes from. And you grab a hold of that. Why are you doing this? And it propels you forward. But it's things like, what business entity should you choose? And this is how you write a business plan. And this is why you have your roadmap written down. And as things go along, sometimes that changes, and you go back and you make those changes. So when you get there, you see where you are still going. You always know where you're going. It talks about, if you're manufacturing a product, how do you do that and not end up with something that doesn't work and just wasted your money? And now you got 15,000 boat anchors instead of, something that was molded to be more useful.
Right.
And then exit strategies. No one runs their company forever. At some point, you're not going to be here anymore. So what's going to happen? You're going to leave it to your kids. You're gonna sell it for $1 million to a public company in M&A and go live on the beaches of Costa Rica. You're gonna liquidate it. What are you gonna do? But that needs to be built in the very beginning, because a lot of times that helps you decide what entity you're going to start with and how you're going to build your business plan, and it all goes in there. But it's all in there. There are stories that show you what happened. There are explicit instructions on what to do next. And if you just go from 1 to 17 on those chapters, you've got your business built. You've got your idea out of your head. You're in the marketplace, and you're going to start making money.
So I want to get back to the idea thing. Get your idea out of your head and into your, cash in or into your bank, right? So, and you mentioned why. So you have to have a why. So how do you help people take an idea that they may not have a why for? It's just an idea that they want to run with or they think is the greatest thing, whatever. How do you help people construct a why around their idea so that they can get started with it and have the grit, as you said, that they're going to need to get through it?
I think it goes, you have to say, well, why do you want to do it? And someone will say, well, I want to do it because I need money. And you say, why do you need money? Well, I need money because my husband was injured in a construction accident and he's not working, and workman's comp quit paying us. Well, so if he's not working, you need money. What do you need the money for? Well, I need it for my kids and to pay the rent. Well, why do you need that? Because I'm the only one left standing here that can actually work and do it. Hmm. And there's your answer. It's because it falls on me and I'm the only one that can do it, so I'm going to do it. And so you have to dig down on the layers and figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Okay. Peel the onion or whatever they say. And this, and I think so it's really interesting that you go all the way from, the start or the idea in your head all the way to the exit, because I haven't seen too many roadmaps that take you sort of that whole way. And it's for that reason, the book probably appeals to, a really wide range of people, because you've got people with just an idea. So they're, startup or pre-startup even. And then you have people thinking about exit. So they have a mature business, or else they're completely burned out but it's stage. It's a totally different stage. So the roadmap takes people through all the stages so they know how to do it, what to expect, how to reflect, how to prepare. Do I have that right?
That's exactly right. It covers service products. It covers actual products. What happens with actual products, and especially if they're created by engineers, is that they can't wait to produce this product. And maybe they're going to produce this little robot that's going to crawl across their desk and get them a new pencil. And they just can't wait to develop this because it's so fun to play with the toy. But at the end of the day, what they have is a fun toy. They don't have a business. So there's nowhere to sell it. There's no infrastructure for distribution and pricing and letting people know about it and marketing. There's none of that. There's just this little robot toy. Right. So you have to teach them at the beginning that that's really the fun part. But it's not a business. So if you want to build a toy for fun, then go do that. But if you're going to make money and share your idea with others, and a lot of times your idea helps other people. If you want to help those other people, you have to create the business infrastructure that allows you to sell it and offer it to others.
Yeah, I often hear that referred to as, what problem are you solving? Like, okay, so you got this cool robot, for example, and man, it's cool. People look at it and be like, that's cool. But what problem is it really solving? Because you have to be solving a problem to have a business.
Well, and you're right about that. So that, when I talk about the marketing, you can do your product, create your product or your service one of two ways. You can go create something you just think is really cool, and then you can go out and try to find a market for it, which usually involves educating people as to why they need it. And then talking them into it, whoever they are, wherever they may be. Or you can go out and find out what the market needs in a niche industry that you're passionate about. And then you can create what they need. And then you just plug it in and your market's already there. And they're ready for it because they've been waiting for it because they need it. Mm-hmm. And the latter obviously is the better way to do that. And you're going to provide something people need, and you don't have to talk them into it because they're waiting for it.
Right. When you said grit comes from the why. I thought that was really prophetic. And I was thinking about the story that I saw in the book about the place you were where the group was climbing a pole, and then you get to the top of the pole, and then you have to jump and grab a trapeze bar, and you took the reader through how you were feeling about it, but also what you were observing. And I thought that it was just a real instructive story of having the grit that comes from having a why, that encouraged you, I guess, or fueled you to do something that was very, very challenging.
Yeah, that story. Well, I went to a personal retreat where it was a personal inner reflective, try to be a better person kind of a thing. And that 50-foot pole was, I thought it just looked like some of the trees I had climbed as a kid, and it was no big deal. But as I watched the people ahead of me, there was a woman ahead of me, and when you climb up the pole, there's huge rungs. And then when you get up to the top, there's nothing stabilizing that pole. So the higher you get, the more it sways because your weight and the wind is pushing it. And by the time you're up to almost that 50 feet, you're swaying pretty good. And then you have to take one foot and put it on top of a pole that's maybe 14 inches wide. And then the next step, there's nothing to hold on to. You're not grabbing something and pulling yourself up. You are hoisting yourself up with your own strength and putting your other foot up there. And you're wearing a helmet and a harness so that most likely when you fall, something catches you, because people freak out because there's nothing to hold on to. And it is just you making that last step by yourself with no hand helping you. It's on you. And so I watched a woman get to that one point. She sat there an hour and she couldn't make herself put her other foot up there. And she eventually crawled back down. And I saw that happen a number of times. And I vowed to myself, number one, it looked harder than it was. But number two, I wasn't going to crawl back down. I was going to do whatever it took to stick my foot up there. And you have to tell yourself this. The worst thing that can happen is you try to get your foot up there and you fall and your harness catches you. And guess what? You get back in line and you try it again. We call that learning from failure. And I figured if the worst comes to worst and I fall, I'm just going to try it again. And I allowed myself the opportunity to say, just go for it. And I said, when I get up there, I'm counting to 3 and I'm making myself stick my foot up there. And it's exactly what I did. And I stood right up, and you have to stand there for 1 minute, and then you leap for the trapeze pole 10 feet out, and you grab it, and then you let go, and you're swinging in your harness, and they bring you down. And relatively few people completed that whole thing. But for me, it came down to that last step. And are you going to go for it or not? And you decide that before you ever get there. You don't decide it when you're standing there. You decide it at the bottom before you start climbing.
Yeah, because if you try to decide it in the moment, you probably aren't going to.
No, you make your mind up before you begin that you're going to make it. And that, that's a life lesson, right? You decide that about a company you're starting. You decide that about a marriage you're starting. You decide that about a marathon that you started running. Whatever it is, you say, I'm going to finish this. I'm leaving in 2 weeks to hike Mount Kilimanjaro. And if I have to crawl on my hands and knees, I'm going to reach that summit. Because at the bottom, I already decided that.
Nice. And I think that polls that what you just described is also a good example of like how easy it is to talk ourselves, how easy it can be to talk ourselves out of something that we can do, because we get hung up on what it will look like if we don't do it, as opposed to getting hung up on what we will look like when we do it. Does that resonate with you? Do you feel like you see that with people?
For sure. Yeah. You would think that maybe the public shame of not being able to do it would make you do it, but that's not necessarily what's behind it all. It's how are you going to feel about yourself, and how is this going to reflect how you are as a person?
Right.
And I mean, other people's opinions matter to some people, but at some point you go, how am I going to feel about that? And then it sets a pattern that you allow yourself to quit. And that's a tough pattern, and it can be broken, but why start it in the first place?
Yeah, right. Good point. Why start it in the first place? You don't have to break something that you haven't started. So I think I skipped over a little bit. We talked about the different degrees you got and some of your, your relationships and such, but I don't know that we had a chance to talk about how you first got started helping entrepreneurs start their businesses and take them through the process that has become Brain to Bank.
I had someone come to me and wanted me to help him start and build a timeshare resort, and it started there, and then it just, I don't know, people just came to me after that, and it just progressed after that. It really came with someone knowing I had, had some building experience and some project management experience. And I don't know, it snowballed from there.
And the book itself, when I wrote my book, I was taught to have like an avatar. Who is the book for? Who is the ideal reader for this book? Who is your ideal reader for the book?
I think it's for entrepreneurs. I think it's for business owners, even if they want to just add a new vertical to an existing business. I think it's for universities and colleges, especially for their business and entrepreneur programs. I can't tell you how many people in business that have read this and said to me, I wish I'd had this when I was getting my degree in business, because they don't teach you. They don't teach you this. They teach you theories, but they don't teach you real life applications. And I think that's a great conduit for the book. Anybody who has an idea for a product or a service or wants to, create a business to help other people, even nonprofits, it's for all of them.
Okay. And the book's available now on Amazon, of course. braintobank.com. Can they get the book there as well, River?
It'll give you a link over to Amazon.
Oh, wonderful.
The audiobook will be out in about a week. And so you can get an ebook, you can get a hardback or a softback. The audio comes out in a week. And then the online course that you can take will be ready in about 90 days.
Okay. And did you read the audio?
I didn't. I hired it out.
Okay.
Which is why I'm not going to listen to our podcast. I can't stand to listen to my own voice.
Okay. Well, there's one listener I'm not going to recruit.
I'll read the script.
Okay. And the course, that's going to be available in 90 days. We're recording this in May of 2023. What's the course about?
It'll be Brain to Bank, and it'll take you through the book, but it'll be a visual representation of what the stories I'm telling and what's happening. Obviously, the workbook stuff is still there. It's just a more entertaining way to learn the material, especially if you're a visual learner. It will solidify the ideas better that way for you.
Okay. And River, before we leave, is there anything that you wished or I should have asked you that I didn't, that you want to leave with me and with the audience before we go?
I don't think so. I think that the summation of it, obviously you can see how I feel about all this, and that's, if you want to do it, go do it. Nothing's stopping you but you. So just start.
Just start. So simple, right? So simple. Just start. Well, I'm very happy to have had this conversation with you, to have looked at the flip book. Look forward to reading the book and completing the things at the end of the chapters to help me with my thinking and my activation. Thank you so much for writing this book, River, and for coming on the podcast, and for leading what sounds to me to be an amazing life, like an amazing, impactful life to so many people. And you're not done. You got a long way to go. We got to get that law degree and climb Mount Kilimanjaro.
That's right. I got to climb Kili first, and then I'll think about the law degree.
There you go. Okay. That sounds fine to me. So you're no longer an underachiever. That sounds fine to me. So.
Mike, thanks so much for having me. This has been really fun.
My pleasure. Everybody that's listening, please, until the next episode, I would like you to maximize your greatness and make your future your property, something that you are very, very proud to own. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to the show. And before you go, I just have 3 requests for you. One, if you like what I'm doing, please consider subscribing or following the podcast on whatever podcast platform you prefer. If you're really into it, leave me a review, write something nice about me, give me 5 stars or whatever you feel is most appropriate. Number 2, I've got a book. It's called Ownership: How Getting Selfish Got Me Unstuck. It's an Amazon bestseller, and I'd love for you to read it or listen to it on Audible or wherever else, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. You can get it everywhere. If you're looking for inspiration that will help you unlock your greatness and potential, order or download it today so that you can have your very own copy. And if you get it, please let me know what you think. Number 3, my newsletter. I do a newsletter every Thursday, and I talk about things that are interesting to me, and or I give more information about the podcast and the podcast guests that I've had and the experiences that I've had with them. You can sign up for the podcast today at my website, which is my name, MikeMalatesta.com. You do that right now, put in your email address, and you'll get the very next issue. The newsletter is short, thoughtful, and designed to inspire, activate, and maximize the greatness in you.